Mary Eleanor Wilkins Freeman. Mary Eleanor Wilkins Freeman, October 31, 1852, March 13, 1930, was an American author. Biography. Freeman was born in Randolph, Massachusetts on October 31, 1852, to Eleanor Lothrop and Warren Edward Wilkins, who originally baptized her Mariella. Freeman's parents were Orthodox Congregationalists, bestowing a very strict childhood. Religious constraints play a key role in some of her works. In 1867, the family moved to Brattleboro, Vermont, where Freeman graduated from the local high school before attending Mount Holyoke College, then Mount Holyoke Female Seminary in South Hadley, Massachusetts, for 1 year from 1870 to 1871. She later finished her education at Glenwood Seminary in West Brattleboro. When the family's dry goods business in Vermont failed in 1873, the family returned to Randolph, Massachusetts. Freeman's mother died 3 years later, and she changed her middle name to Eleanor in her memory. Freeman's father died suddenly in 1883, leaving her without any immediate family and an estate worth only $973. Wilkins returned to her hometown of Randolph. She moved in with a friend, Mary J. Wales, and began writing as her only source of income. During a visit to Metuchen, New Jersey in 1892, she met Dr. Charles Manning Freeman, a non-practicing medical doctor 7 years younger than she. After years of courtship and delays, the two were married on January 1, 1902. Immediately after, she firmly established her name as Mary E. Wilkins Freeman, which she asked Harper's to use on all of her work. The couple built a home in Metuchen, where Freeman became a local celebrity for her writing, despite having occasionally published satirical fictional representations of her neighbors. Her husband suffered from alcoholism and an addiction to sleeping powders. He also had a reputation for driving fast horses and womanizing. He was committed to the New Jersey State Hospital for the Insane in Trenton, and the two legally separated a year later. After his death in 1923, he left the majority of his wealth to his chauffeur and only $1 to his former wife. In April 1926, Freeman became the first recipient of the William Dean Howells Medal for Distinction in Fiction from the American Academy of Arts and Letters. Freeman suffered a heart attack and died in Metuchen on March 15, 1930, aged 77. She was laid to rest in Hillside Cemetery in Scotch Plains, New Jersey. Adolescence. As an adolescent, Freeman was increasingly caught between the need for her mother's love and her instinct to avoid becoming her mother and subsiding into her mother's form of passivity. Despite continuous pressure from her mother to participate in domestic chores, no amount of discipline could pull Mary away from her reading to the reality of hated kitchen work. According to Edward Foster's biography of Freeman, disliking her household duties, she avoided them, nor could she be moved by disciplinary tactics. It is clear that a growing tension between Mary and her mother centered on her resistance to undertaking the tasks expected of a good girl. As the years passed, the contrast between Mary and her sister, Anna, while her sister Anna willingly undertook domestic work and increasingly met her parents' expectations, Mary quietly began to reject them. She would resist her mother's world of domesticity throughout her entire life. Her story, The Revolt of Mother, is especially significant in this context, for the story seems to have been written as a tribute to her mother's work, a form of work she had never valued in her mother's lifetime. Writing. Freeman began writing stories and verse for children while still a teenager to help support her family, and was quickly successful. Her career as a short story writer launched in 1881 when she took first place in a short story contest with her submission, The Ghost Family. When the supernatural caught her interest, the result was a group of short stories which combined domestic realism with supernaturalism, and these have proved very influential. Her best-known work was written in the 1880s and 1890s while she lived in Randolph. She produced more than 24 volumes of published short stories and novels. She is best known for two collections of stories, A Humble Romance and Other Stories 1887, and A New England Nun and Other Stories 1891. Her stories deal mostly with New England life. Freeman is also remembered for her novel Pembroke 1894, and she contributed a notable chapter to the collaborative novel entitled The Whole Family 1908. Through her different genres of work including children's stories, poems, and short stories, Mary Wilkins Freeman sought to demonstrate her values as a feminist. During the time which she was writing, she did this in non-conventional ways. For example, she diverged from making her female characters weak and in need of help, which was a common trope in literature. Through characters, such as Louisa in her short story, A New England Nun, Freeman challenges contemporary ideas concerning female roles, values, and relationships in society. Also, Freeman's short story, The Revolt of Mother, illustrated the struggles of rural women and the role they played within their families. The Revolt of Mother initiated the discussion on the rights of rural women, went on to inspire many more pieces discussing the lack of control rural women had over families' finances and looking to improve the structure of farm families in the early 20th. The one-act opera The Village Singer by Stephen Paulus was adapted from a Freeman short story. It was commissioned by Opera Theatre of St. Louis and was premiered in 1979. Although she produced 12 volumes of short stories and as many novels, Freeman is remembered chiefly for the first two collections of stories, A Humble Romance and Other Stories 1887 and A New England Nun and Other Stories 1891, and the novel Pembroke 1894, Britannica Encyclopedia.